I still don't know what to think about what I'm about to tell you. I want to believe that it was a prank, but I think you'll see that's not possible. 6 years ago, my wife and I decided to order a pizza for dinner. We picked a place we'd been wanting to try for a while and gave them a call. We were told our pizza would arrive in about 30 minutes. 40 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I was a little irritated that it was 10 minutes late and was trying to think of something snarky to say as I opened the door. But when I saw the delivery guy, I couldn't think of anything else to say except, "Hi." He stood at my door with a slack expression on his face. He didn't make eye contact with me, he just stared forward. I took the pizza, paid him, thanked him, and expected him to just turn away. Instead, he just stood there looking dazed. I asked him if everything was okay. His lips parted as if he was about to say something. I waited for a moment, and just as I was about to ask again, he turned away and slowly began walking back to his car. After he drove off, I walked back into the kitchen with the pizza, told my wife that the drivers for that pizza place were weird, and we had our dinner. I didn't really think much about it until about an hour later when the phone rang. It was the pizza place. The man on the other line sounded shaken. "I'm so sorry for the delay in your delivery," the man said, "but there was a terrible accident." Well, it was only 10 minutes late," I said. "It's not a big deal." "What accident?" "10 minutes, the man asked. "No. The driver sent out on your delivery was in a car accident and died while on his way to your house." "You must be mistaken," I told him. "It must have happened after he left here." I told the man on the phone that the driver had arrived at 6:15. "That's just not possible," he said. "Joe, the driver, was killed right after he left here with your delivery at 5:50. It happened 1 block away from here when a semi ran a red light. Joe was killed instantly. All 4 of his deliveries were still in the backseat of his car." The man told me there would be a refund on my credit card in a day or so. I told him I was very sorry to hear of the accident. He said thank you and hung up. To this day, we've never ordered another pizza for delivery again. It was pouring rain on the lonely highway. Don't all horror stories start out like this? As I drove slowly past the broken down car with its hood popped open, I glanced out my passenger side window, expecting to find the other car empty, the driver having gone off in search of help. Instead, I saw a pale face, limp blonde hair, black gaping eyes, and a mouth frozen in a scream, pressed up against the driver's side window. I nearly lost control of my car, but managed to pull over just ahead. Collecting myself, I reasoned that I'd just misinterpreted whatever it was I'd seen. I glanced into my rearview mirror, the car behind me awash in the glow of my brake lights, appearing like a vision bathed in blood. My view of the inside was completely obstructed by the open hood. I gathered my courage, gave myself a pep talk, and exited my car. I carefully approached the vehicle's driver's side and stole a quick look inside. Nothing. Empty. I looked through all of the windows and into the back seat just to be sure. The inside of the car was completely dry, as if no one had opened the door, not even long enough to step outside. I turned to walk back to my car. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the same terrifying face, frozen in a scream. When I awoke, I was lying in the road under the warm summer rain, soaked to the skin. I couldn't have been out that long, but the broken down car was gone, leaving no indication it had ever been there. I had not been robbed. My car was still running. I drove home and have never told anyone this story until now. A couple of months ago, I was home by myself getting ready for work. My dad had just left to pick up my sister from the airport. I was in my room, putting on my shoes, when there was a sudden knock on the bedroom door. I assumed that my dad had forgotten something and come back, so I called out for him to come in. The doorknob turned and the door cracked open about 2 inches. "What's up?" I said, thinking my dad was either just being funny or trying not to be intrusive. There was no response. I reached for the knob, but before I could grab it, the door slammed shut. It startled me, but I still thought it was my dad, so I yanked the door open and jumped out into the hall, ready to foil any plan he had of trying to scare me. There was no one there. I looked all over the house. The doors were locked and I was the only one home. His car was not in the driveway. I called Dad's cell phone. When he answered, I could tell that he was driving. I asked him, "Were you just here? Were you just trying to mess with me?" He said no, and that he was already almost halfway to the airport. I grabbed my things and ran out of the house as fast as I could. The next day, I told my sister what had happened. She looked pale. She told me that the same thing had happened to her about 3 months before, except instead of the door slamming, she saw an old woman's face pressed up against the crack in the door. She'd been too afraid to mention it to anyone until then. I moved out into my own apartment a few months after that, and to this day, I don't close the door to my bedroom anymore.